So somebody emailed me from Facebook and asked if I would make a big one for her.
Of course. Yeah. So
Sure.
yeah, I can,
She
yeah.
wants like a life-size horse coming out of her wall.
Oh my God. I know. You know what? I'm doing actually this image. I'm having so much success with this image.
I bet you are. It's really beautiful.
And you know what? I swear to God, I mean, you can understand this. It's kind of like having a good ride, but it's literally like it takes like hundreds of fucking photos to get a good one. And
Right.
this was so accidental. It was like I was photographing a polo match, and this horse's name is Ed, and he's a good looking horse.
Yeah.
He's not this good looking in life. Like this was like a magical moment for like the camera, for him, for like me, for like everybody involved. And it was like he was literally just getting his he was coming in off the field, and the rider was just jumping off, and I was zoomed in at 600, and it was just like the light hit his eye,
Oh
and
my
he just like
God.
turned his head, and it's like I mean that, like, you know what I mean? It's like you could
Just
never.
those happy accidents that just make the picture.
So yeah, so I ride, the other barn I ride at is totally like teenagers and like loosey goosey, and I don't have any training, and like I could just, but I love this one horse there. She's a lesson pony, and I just love her. She's like, I just spoiled the. People used to say she was nasty, and she got kicked out of her old barn for squishing children against the barn, like squishing children. Like she would attack people.
Oh my
And
God.
I was just like, no, this horse is not like that. This horse
Oh,
is so awesome. And so I've been working with her for like a year, and she's just like she's like a dog she like puts her head on me and rubs my shoulder, and like, yeah, she's amazing.
it's funny once they find you, they let you know. They're like, "Hey,
I know. I
I'm
know.
here. You found me."
I know. And now I have her bucket trained. So when I pull up in the driveway, she comes trotting over the fence because I feed her like her vitamins and apples and carrots out of this blue bucket.
Oh
And
yeah.
now I just like shake the bucket, and she just comes running. And it's like, it's pretty amazing. They're very interesting animals.
They are, aren't they?
Yeah.
Oh, I
All
tell
right.
ya.
So yes, could help you. I mean, from what I saw of that piece, tell me if I'm wrong, but it looked like you put the wax on,
Mhm.
and then you used the heat gun.
Yeah.
And so you kind of got that swirl
Yeah.
through the heat.
So I did the layer of wax first,
Uh-huh.
the
Yep.
medium
Yep.
first, and then I heated up these
Yep.
blocks,
Yep.
and then I rubbed it all over
Oh, okay.
on the wax while
Okay.
it's hot, and
Yep.
then I sort of like shaded in some of the areas because I
Yep.
just wanted to see what I didn't know how to. We didn't talk about how to use these the last time we talked, so
Okay.
I'm like, okay, do I break it up? No, I think I'll just rub it on there and see what happens, and then I let it dry, and then I put more wax on top of it,
Right.
and then I used the heat gun. I was gonna like smooth it out, and then
Uh-huh.
by using the heat gun, it melted the wax underneath
Yep.
also, and it made that swirly effect. And then I put some gold foil at the top just to see what gold foil would look like.
Okay, so I'm going to say two things. One is that you can use the gold foil. I don't love, sometimes I just don't love the gold foil but we can talk about that. I like powder. Gold,
Okay.
yeah, you can get gold powder. You can get it in the pan pastel like thing like this
Okay.
of gold, but you can experiment with what you like. I mean, the powder is definitely going to go on more translucent, whereas the foil can be opaque.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, I kind of bunched it up at the top,
yeah.
and actually the heat gun did that too.
Yeah,
It kind of moved it around.
you don't need to heat gun foil unless you want it to go in the wax, right? So
I did, yeah.
okay.
I wanted
Okay.
it to be kind of buried and like pop through, so it gave like this weird texture at the top. But
Okay.
everything else is smooth.
Okay. That sounds good. So do you want to talk about, I actually have, hold on. I have this piece we could work on. What do you want to talk about today?
So I guess I want to talk about like if I'm going to do something big, I I want to talk about what to expect, first of
Yeah.
all. And then also like materials,
Yeah.
and then
How big is big?
36 by 72.
Holy smokes. Okay, that's really big. So a couple things you're going to have to think about is more than one hot plate
Okay.
and uh, lots of tins of wax
Yeah.
and a bigger brush.
Can I pour the wax on it?
So we can talk about a pour. I think you should practice with the pour, but I feel like you're going to waste a lot of wax if you pour that big.
Okay.
And granted, you're also going to need like a container to pour the wax into.
Okay.
So you would literally need like a tray
Right.
under the piece to pour. I think you're better off with brushing.
Okay.
And then what I do is I brush like a kind of a lot of wax medium. And if you make, so this is the thing that I do, and I do this all the time, and I try to tell my students, like explain kind of how I do it. But like every photo does not make a great wax piece, right? In caustic painting. So what I tend to do is make a lot of work in like 5x7 or 8x10 or 10x10, right? And practice with certain images. So like I go through like my editing process in the photography.
Right.
And then I print, like, say I print a batch of like 3 or 4 different images a couple times. And I usually paint them on paper first.
Okay.
So that I don't have to deal with the expense of the wood and the time of the wood, you know, because that's a commitment. It's like, you know, it's a physical commitment. It's a money commitment, right? So it's like all of these things. But if you work on paper, you can work more freely. You can work a little quicker. You can kind of get a feel for which images you like with the wax. So like this, I would take a paper piece. I would just brush the wax. We can talk today about adding the encaustic layer if you want. And then like you fuse and you can remove the wax or you can add another layer, right? It sounds like in a way you did something that worked and
Yeah.
now somebody wants you to basically replicate it.
Right.
Okay.
I offered to photograph it and then mount it big.
Yeah.
And she said no, she wants the texture.
You know what? I for years too, like I kept, because the thing about my like art career is like not all my encaustic pieces turn out.
Yeah.
So I have to make like 10 to 1.
Yeah.
And then the other 9 get like recycled. I scrape them back. Like, even though I'm a professional, I do this all the time. I don't like to stay in what I call like a formula. Yeah. I like to just I like to push the envelope. Yeah, I like the flow, and I want surprise and mystery and sort of like something magical. So I'm not just going to do a single layer and paint it and have a show, because that's like too easy. Right. I could do that. Like I could do that, and I do that sort of commercially, but I don't want to do that for my art. I sort of want it to be something more. Yeah. But that leaves a lot of trial and error. So I could never get people to buy prints of wax pieces either. And my gallery was like, no, I want originals. So I was like, okay, but that means I'm only going to be able to produce maybe 20 to 30 pieces a year, even though I like work every day. Yeah. I just am not that prolific it's just not possible. So, but I feel like a lot of painters have that dilemma where the time that goes into a painting can be like 3 months or 6 months, you know, and of a painting. Yeah. Before they're done. And so then you're like, well, how many paintings did you make this year? And you're like, 1, 2. You know what I mean? And it's like, you look bad, but you're not, it's just a slower process. Yeah. So I think your best bet for this piece is, well, there's a couple things we need to talk about. Is one, are you going to order a print that big and try to glue it? Or are you going to segment it? So what I do when I work big is I segment it. So it means I put like 4 16 by 20s together.
Okay.
And
So I was thinking I would try to print it
at home.
at home, or not at home, but there's a printer, but I don't know. So that's the other thing that I had questions about is, first of all, the paper that you'd print that on. And then second of all, the gluing part of
So
it.
I would definitely print it on a photo rag.
Okay.
And I would glue it in sections.
Okay.
So I can actually show you. Do you want to see a slideshow of how I did it?
Do you have one?
Uh-huh.
Oh, that'd be
Okay,
great.
so wait, watch this. So I was in a show last summer, and it was actually kind of interesting because it was like sort of like the one good thing that happened out of, like, for me, a lot of my art shows were canceled, but this was one thing that did happen, which was exciting. It was I mean, we didn't have an opening, and I don't even know how many people actually like saw it. But we did do it. Oh wait, not that. Hold on. So, but we did do like a cool virtual presentation where I had to make this slideshow. So this was called Poised and Forceful. So this is a slideshow about my work and sort of the history of my life. So I started out as like a photojournalist, and this was actually a book I made in probably 1994 about homeless street kids, and I traveled all over the world and photographed them. Then I did a project on women who'd suffered trauma. So like here's some of my past like artworks. And like this one right here on the right is huge. It's probably like 50 by 68.
Oh my God.
So I don't know if you can see, but if you look closely, they're panels.
Yep.
And I really like that because I feel like it adds another dimension of like sort of just texture and alchemy. So your layers could go right up, like they could cross over, or they can, and I like the crossover because unless you want the idea of a grid, right? Because I've done work like that too.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's kind of how I did it. So do you see how I printed the pieces? Now, this is interesting for you, is that for this particular show, I did use a picture of a small finished wax piece.
Oh, interesting.
Now, that gives you, it's kind of like having a cheat sheet.
Yeah.
Because
yes.
Because you have a little bit of like a blueprint of what that person liked about it.
Yeah.
And you have a little bit. So traditionally I start with a black and white.
Yeah.
And I add all the color, like, so this one, I started with the black and white, and then I added all this color with wax paint, encaustic paint. And I did a little bit of like collage on the outside edges.
Yeah.
But like this one, I knew I got curated into the show and they picked pieces. So I felt a little bit more comfortable using the color images.
Yep. That makes sense.
So here's a picture of, I can't. Here's a picture of it glued together so you can see the seams of how I went into Photoshop. I cropped each panel. And then I glued them together. And then I put the wax on top. I mean, these are some pictures of like details of certain areas of the paintings.
Yeah.
But you could it would at least give you like a little bit of a guideline, so to speak, or the color palette that she already knows she likes. And then you can add your layer of wax and then just kind of push and pull and touch it up.
So she said she likes the picture that I chose of the horse. and she just wants texture. Everything else she's kind of leaving up to me. She's like, I just want you to create
Yeah.
me something with this picture.
Yeah. So you could do, so if she's giving you that much leeway, you could just go back to the original picture and wax it.
Okay. Well,
I mean,
what do I print it on? Can I print it on copy paper?
I wouldn't use copy paper to go that big. What paper do you have? What printer do you have at home?
It's Technical Reproductions. So they can do copy paper because it's like blueprints. Like paper that they print blueprints on.
Right.
And then they said they can do a heavier weight paper on a different printer.
So if I were you, I would do a test. And I would do a medium size.
Okay.
Like I wouldn't go straight to the big one. I would do an intermediate size, like a 16 by 20 or 16 by 24.
Okay.
And put it together in pieces, like 4 pieces, divided into 4 pieces. Try that. I wouldn't use the copy paper. I would try the heavier paper.
Okay.
As long as you feel like you can glue it.
Yeah, I think that was the problem that I had with, so I tried something with heavier paper on a little one. This was my oranges.
Ooh, yeah, I love that.
It lifted.
Yeah, that's no good.
Yeah.
That's no good. So you can fix that now. You need to fix that. So this is what you need to stick a ton of, so look, I'm over, this is what I use now.
What's that, Titebond?
I'm not messing around. Yeah, my paper is not coming off my wood.
Yeah.
So I stopped thinking about the paper and I started thinking about the wood. And I'm just like, I'm going to use this carpenter's glue and just like get it done.
And just nail it down. Okay.
Yeah, I'm like, I can't. And if you feel like you want to be like, you could mix these two together. I'm not messing around. I don't want this stuff to come off in a show, or late if I sell it, I don't want it to come apart.
Okay.
So that's one thing. The other thing is, I could print it for you. If you want to send me no, I would have to print it in 16 by 20 panels.
16 by 20.
Yeah. Do you know these guys? Let me show you these. Do you know these artists? I got this idea from my favorite artists. Their names are the Starn twins. They're Doug and Mike. But I just love this style.
Oh, yeah.
So like this is beautiful. Cool. Like this is what I saw. So I've been in love with this work since I was like in college and graduate school. And this was just like, I just love it so much. I love the fact that it was like torn. I like the metaphor too of like torn apart and put back together.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like the like tonality shifts and I like the little rough edges. So this is basically how I construct all of anything over 16 by 20 for me. It's patchwork. Yeah. I call it patchwork.
Patchwork. Okay. That makes sense.
So I take the image into Photoshop. I take my 16 by 20 crop tool and I divide it into pieces.
Okay. All right. If you had, let's say a 16 by 20, so a 32 by 40, or then you go bigger than that. So 60.
Well, here, 32 by 40. So half of 32
is 16.
Is 16. And then, look, that's perfect. So it's 16 by 20.
Right.
16 by 20, 16 by 20, 16 by 20. Right?
Right. Yeah. Okay. I see.
So I would do it on the photo rag, which is basically 188. That's the GSMs of the paper is 188.
Okay.
And then I would, glue them on the panel. I don't think I have I have some example. I don't know. It's just basically, and sometimes I throw like extra collage stuff in there, like old letters.
Yeah.
Or other things.
So what if I don't want to see the seams? You just push it really close together?
You can, if you don't want to see the seams, what I do is I do another layer of the subject matter. So say the horse's face
Yeah.
is the most important thing and you don't want to see it, then you print an additional photo of the horse's face.
Got it.
And you put it over all four.
Yeah.
Wait, look at this artist's work. It'll totally make sense. This guy is also a big influence of mine. But what he does is he uses this kind of like repetition of subject matter as sort of showing off like what's the most important part of the picture. So do you see how he made the face lighter?
Yeah.
So he uses square, like see how he made another square?
Oh.
So he's like emphasizing that part of the image as like the most important part, or sort of like if we were like poetry, it would be like, you know, just those bigger words that are more important than other words. Like, see how he uses the square?
Yep. I see that.
And he also uses wax, but he uses wax just as like a layering texture. He doesn't really like, but do you see how he used these squares here too, to kind of give it like a more interesting depth? And this is like forward and this is going back.
Okay.
So that's a technique too.
Okay. So
right?
I need to try this on a more medium-sized panel so I can see what that.
Yeah, and I'm happy to, if you want me to print them for you, I mean, I'll charge you like $10 or $15 a print if you want, or you can try your lab, whatever you feel comfortable with.
No, that would be awesome. So if I send you, you want me to just crop it? I'll pick the size of the panel to try it on first, and then I'll just crop it into like 6 squares or 6 sections.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would try the idea of like the horse's head. If you don't want if the seam ends up in the face.
Yeah, let me see.
Then I would do another crop of the horse's head and layer it on top. Okay.
So we would do like here.
Yep.
And just layer it on top of that.
Exactly.
Because
you'd have the 4
chest or the focal point.
Right. And then, and we could actually mix the papers too. So you could do the background in the photo rag, and then you could do the head in rice paper, which is a little bit thinner. So it could go right over. And I just think once you start waxing it, you're going to get rid of you're going to be able to kind of disguise the lines. But
because once I put that color over it, it kind of blurs all that together to create, that's where I was like getting that smoky look, because I blended all of that in there.
Right. But because the idea from like years ago, probably in 2010, I had a huge exhibition and I made life-size encaustic pieces, and I ordered the prints. I outsourced the prints. They came huge. It was so hard to glue them.
Really?
It was so hard to glue them. I mean, it just took hours and hours of scraping, and I mean, no way.
Yeah. Okay.
Air bubbles.
Yeah.
No way. Pieces. I only do pieces.
Okay. That's really valuable to hear that. But
you have to like the look, and you need to try it out before you do it big.
Okay. So I'll work on getting the cuts of the picture, and then I'll send it over to you.
Okay.
I'll work on that. Yeah. That's really valuable to hear that.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Of course. No, I'm happy to help you. No, it's great.
I don't want to mess it up.
Well, yeah, but you can't mess it up because it might take you a couple times. I mean, once you put the wax on, it might not jump right into formation and look perfect, but you have the ability to scrape it back and start again, using the heat gun. I
Right.
mean, we can talk about that.
And
too.
then so I had another question about just in general about, I feel like the prep for all of this is kind of more, it like takes just as long for the prep as it does for like the actual painting part. So I just want to make sure that like when I'm prepping my materials, like I'm prepping the boards correctly. Do I have to put a gesso on the board, or is it okay just to put the paper on and that is the layer there?
Exactly.
Okay.
There's no need to there's no need to gesso the board before you put the glue and paper on.
Okay.
The only reason, so this piece right here, I did what I call like a split canvas where I have photo on half and then I have empty space. This is encaustic gesso, right? So this is gesso that's made for encaustic paint to go over top of it. It's made by R&F.
Right. Yep.
Okay. So, but I like it because if I put wax over wood, and even when I put wax over the photo, I'm putting a translucent layer over a color.
Yeah.
So this color is natural wood color. This color is brown. But if I want to put wax over bright white,
yeah,
that's the reason that I'm going to use the encaustic gesso.
Somebody told me to use the tempera.
For what?
As the gesso instead of getting the actual encaustic gesso. No? Okay.
I would not. I love encaustic gesso.
Okay.
I think it's the best. It's just, I mean, I don't think you're supposed to use any type of acrylics underneath encaustics. That's what I've always heard.
So tempera it's not acrylic. It's made from crushed eggshell.
Oh, okay. I've never heard that. I mean, that
like
you could,
natural.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, if you want it, I mean, it's fine. I mean, I just love encaustic gesso. And one of the reasons that I love it is that it actually, it burns and it bubbles and gives you it can give you texture. I don't know that I don't use tempera paint except in school with the kids. So I don't know.
Okay.
I only use tempera because it's like the cheapest paint that you can buy.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's why I was like, oh, I'll try that and see what it does. And I didn't know, prepping the boards and that kind of stuff, like what I need to be looking for. So
I don't think anything. I mean, the only other thing that you need to start thinking about is edges. Like, what are you going to do to the edges?
Right. Exactly.
So
I printed this picture.
This
is a friend of mine got married in Italy.
It's beautiful.
And I thought that would be really cool. And then have the edges kind of burned like you showed me the last time.
Okay. Yep.
So I have a torch.
Oh, yeah.
I got all the things.
Awesome.
Things, Leah.
That's awesome. Yeah, you look good. I love your little setup too. It's beautiful. So when you go you're going to need another hot plate when you go bigger.
Yes. So I did get a new hot plate and this one's much better. It melts a lot faster.
Okay.
And then I convinced my husband to let me use the dining room table for these projects. So it's really big.
Yeah, you might have to do it outside. I don't know. It's cold where you are, but yeah, you're gonna need sawhorses. You're gonna need a table.
And I did get some poke brushes.
Okay.
I don't know how you say that.
Hake.
Yes. So I got those.
Do you want what we have about 20 more minutes today. What do you want to do? Do you want me to demonstrate layering with encaustic paint?
Yeah. So let's talk about that.
Okay. So
this
FYI too, I'm probably being overly generous with myself, but I just feel like everybody needs little perks in COVID right now. So you know that I have a YouTube channel, right?
No, I did not know that.
So I have been recording all of my classes since March.
Oh, all right. I'm going to
So,
really absorb
so
myself in that.
they're free for now. I'm thinking in the future that I'm going to switch to Patreon, which will be subscription based, and the subscriptions would be like $20 to $40 or $50 a month, and
Yeah.
people would have unlimited access to all of my encaustic materials.
Wow, that's
But
amazing.
but right now I'm teaching on Thursday nights. I'm teaching a class called Burn in the Basics. So it's basically like a beginner encaustic class.
Great.
So like it's 2 hours of like how to prep the panel, 2 hours of how to layer encaustic, 2 hours of how to paint with pigment sticks, 2 hours, you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like it, and it's a really nice class because it's nice to take the time, like 2 hours, to talk about
Yeah.
sort of each of these things and sort of all of like the factors that go into them, right?
Yeah.
Because there's always more than one way to do stuff. So I think I've talked to you before about my mud tray, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so this is where I clean my brushes. These brushes are all clean. I also have 3 different sizes. So, well, actually I have 2 different sizes. I have 3 brushes, but 2 different sizes. So technically, here I can put this one up. I like having different size brushes. Because I like to sort of like switch gears. It's kind of like, let's think of it like in terms of horse terms, we could say like different gaits, right? So like it's like a walk, trot, or canter, right? So your walk is definitely going to be the smaller brush, right? Because you can't go as far,
Right.
right? And you're going to have to take more steps to get there,
Got
right?
it.
So
Okay.
the medium-sized brush is going to be a trot, and then the biggest brush would be, so for you, when you go to do the big piece, you can even get an 8-inch Hake brush.
Yes.
So that means that you just are going to have to go one time to cover 8 inches of your panel. That's
Yeah.
like a big deal, right? I'm going to open up this gesso too and just kind of show you one of the things that I like to do with the gesso. First of all, I just think it's like such a beautiful medium. And I even sometimes like to just grab a paper towel and dip it in and kind of just like, so for me, because this is floral, right? I can just sort of start to think about continuing outside the canvas here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I'm not doing that much, and I could go right on the photo too. So what I tend to do is like go add white to highlight areas, because I'm going to put, wax is never like crystal clear.
Yeah.
So I like to think about, the light coming from within or from behind, right? Because I know, like, I don't know about you, but like one of my favorite things in photography is backlighting.
Yep.
Or like low 3/4, like summer day when the light's just like shining through something and illuminating it from the back.
Yeah.
So this to me is like backlighting.
Yeah.
Where I have light coming from the back of my painting.
Okay.
By adding bright white. Then if I take my torch to this, oh wait, here, I'm going to pin this picture so we're not, hold on.
I can see your desktop.
As the biggest picture?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I want. I want this as the biggest picture.
Yes.
All right, so I mean, adding this to me just helped this whole composition sort of spread out. So I can add heat to it now. And what do you see what happens? So I'm going to get like sort of positive and negative space. And also, do you see how the gesso is bubbling up?
Yeah. And it doesn't burn it though. Like it doesn't change the color to it.
Not that much. No, it stays pretty white, but it gets really fun and textured.
Yeah.
And then I can kind of give it like a little, and also the photo can get like a little stainy looking, like I stained it, like with selenium or like Tito. So it gets like a little like purpley brown. And I just love all these like brownie tones. So I could just do something very simple like that, right?
I like that. Yeah.
And it just gives it like a little bit more dimension, and also just like helps me sort of like get started in this. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is just take, I'm always going to do that coat of wax medium over the photo first, right?
Right.
And what I find most of the time with beginner encaustic people is that they're just afraid to put too much wax on.
Okay.
So really, you can't be afraid of that because it's just so easy to remove wax. It's like you just can't put too much on.
Right. Okay.
Just don't like, just take that out. So, oh, I'm not plugged in. All right. I just want to make sure this is dry. I'm just going to tap this gesso out because, so like for you, when you're going to work on this bigger piece, you could take the biggest brush you have, wax medium, right? And you can just start, your coverage. Some people like to heat the panel up before they start waxing, but I kind of just did that because I just heated it with the heat gun, right?
Right.
And that just helps the wax flow. And it was so cute in my class on Thursday. We called it lobster butter. So now I can't stop thinking about lobster when I'm painting. I'm just like, lobster butter.
It does look like lobster butter, doesn't it?
Well, when it's warm, it moves like lobster butter, right? It's so nice when the panel is warm. So you can always preheat the panel, right, to get more movement. Because I know, and I hear this all the time, people are like, I don't understand why my wax isn't flowing. And I'm like, well, is your studio cold? Is your wax too cold? Is your panel cold, right? So that's like a nice, like full coverage of the whole piece. Now, technically, I do not have to fuse this. And I kind of don't want to fuse it because I love the overlapping brush strokes. I love like the droppy forms of where I put the brush. I mean, I try to always remind people that you're using wax for what wax does. And it's all, you don't want to like hold it back, from being itself in a way. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So you want to use it and like love everything that it does. Like I feel sad when people are like frustrated because they're like, oh, it's clumpy or it's brushy, or I'm like, wait, but that's what wax it does. Like that's it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add an encaustic layer. So I tend to go for maybe a light color next, but I could add a dark color mostly. And the reason I would even think about adding a dark encaustic paint is because I have just this light dark line here, and I just don't want a line.
Yeah.
So what I'm thinking about is I'm always thinking about blending, right? I'm always thinking about these layers blending over each other, right? And how they're working together.
Okay.
So I don't love this hard line.
Yeah.
So I'm literally just going to be like, oh, I'm going to solve a problem that I have. My problem is that line. So I'm going to look at some dark colors and I'm going to try to think, what color is this? Like, it's not exactly gray and it's not exactly brown. And so I think I'm going to make a mixture color, right? So I have 3 colors. I have like and I like to blend multiple paints together. It's just something that I do because I like sort of the in-between colors of color. So I'm going to put gray, brown, and a little bit of like a reddish brown. And then I'm going to add a ton of wax medium to this paint, right? And I'm going to mix it together. Now, I'm pretty happy with that color. And I'd have to say, after all these years of spotting photos, repairing photos, painting photos, that I'm pretty good at matchy-matchy.
Yeah.
Okay. So then I'm just going to take this encaustic paint and I'm just going to literally go like this. And this is pretty, it's actually more translucent than I thought it would be. But yeah. I'm just covering to blend, right? And I'm loving the way the white is popping through, right? If I wanted to make it more opaque, I would add more paint, right?
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
So it's mixing it with the wax medium that makes it translucent. So you see how it's getting more opaque here? And that's what I want, is I want this line. So sometimes my goals and my instincts on the painting are fairly simple. And a lot of my goal is blending. Using these layers to blend and make the piece feel like more unified.
Okay.
And textured. And I'm also trying to sort of find this happy medium of sort of covering the photo and having the photo emerge. And I think that's what worked in the piece that you made, is you created like this scene on top that created emotion and energy, and the horse felt like it was coming out of like some situation.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like what's here, is like I've created this dark layer over these flowers, and now I can kind of like bring them out from underneath as if they're like overcoming an obstacle, right? Or emerging. So those are nice analogies. And also, like, I love all of this texture I have here. So I'm going to fuse, just because now I have to fuse, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to fuse with my torch, and I'm just going to go like this. And I'm not going to hold it too long in one place, because that would completely dissolve my wax. So I don't want to do that. I want to maintain some of my texture. So I'm going to go like 6 inches away and kind of up and down, right? And look how cool, like, do you see the encaustic gesso is kind of like popping through here?
Yeah, it really is.
It's really like nice. It's kind of like showing its little, right? And then I'm getting some cool little bubbles here. And it like kind of breaks my heart in a lot of way when people go, oh, I got bubbles in the wax. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, I did get a few bubbles in the wax. And I wasn't sure if that was something that I did wrong, or if that was just how the wax is.
It's a little bit of both. So if you want to close the bubbles, you can hit it with a heat gun. Also, it's just air. So sometimes the heat helps the air dissipate. So if you heat the panel and then brush the wax, you might get less bubbles.
Okay.
But you can also heal the bubbles. So you can scrape them off and fill them, or you can hit them with a heat gun.
Okay.
Okay, so go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. What was your question?
So when you fill it, like, is it something that happens in the pasting of the image when you put the glue on, and then you put the picture on? Is that where the air is coming from, or is it?
No, the air is between the surface of the photo and the wax.
Okay.
While you're brushing, you're trapping air.
Right.
But if the wax is hot and the panel is warm, you're going to have less air, because the wax is going to move quicker.
Okay.
And and I mean, these bubbles here are from the encaustic gesso, because there's a uneven surface there.
Right.
So that's why I have these, but I don't really have any other air bubbles in my whole piece.
And so if you have the air bubbles, and if you don't get rid of them, will it create that like a bloom over time? I'm just thinking, like, archivally, how will that work?
No,
will it spread?
Not a problem.
Okay.
That's not a problem.
Okay.
No, the air bubbles are not bad. I mean, air bubbles really are never really bad. They just create texture. They're not going to like hurt the piece. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you have air bubbles under a print, when you glue a print, I mean, yeah, it's not going to make it completely unstable. It's just going to have a bump there, and you're going to see it, because it's not going to be a totally smooth surface.
Okay. I just envision, like, not having a completely smooth surface, that then the wax will crack over time.
No.
Okay.
The wax is a flexible medium. It's also a preservative. It also doesn't undergo personal stress or aging unless it's exposed to extreme heat or extreme cold. Right? And honestly, the heat, the extreme cold is worse for the wax than the heat.
Okay.
But if it's living in somebody's home, it's not going to be frozen.
Well, then how would you, what would you recommend doing in terms of shipping?
I don't ever have any problems with shipping, because your piece is wrapped in paper, wrapped in bubble wrap, in a box, in a moving vehicle, hopefully for only like a day or two,
Okay.
and it should be fine.
Okay.
It's also, the thing about wax is it's kind of like, did you ever do film photography?
Yep.
So did you ever do reticulation?
Remind me what that is again, because I'm sure I did it.
Okay, reticulation is when you use a developer that's one temperature and a fixer that's another temperature.
Yes. Yes.
So
Okay.
the damage comes from the very quick change of one climate to another climate.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Or of course, if it was in a prolonged, I mean, the thing about wax is if it's in a prolonged frozen state, and it's not moved or thrown or touched, technically it could be defrosted and be okay.
Okay.
It's just if it's like suffers trauma while it's in the frozen state, it will crack.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. I think where she wants to hang this is in a hallway that it doesn't have any natural light coming in, so it's all like consistent, same area temperature.
Yeah, that's good for all art. I mean, you remember these are, even Oriental rugs fade.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, okay. So the next thing, I think we're coming close to our end, and so the next thing that I always do is I take a razor blade and I just explore this surface with the razor blade, because to me, the beauty happens when you're blending these layers, right? So when I'm using the razor blade, I'm thinning the top coat, right? Which is blooming, bringing the underneath back to the surface. So like, look how pretty this is. Like, I'm just lightly scraping it to sort of bring back the light, because I know that behind this darkness, I have light, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of, it's like very similar to like dodging a photo, right? Where you're taking a dark area and that you have some detail in the darkness.
Yep.
So you're bringing it back.
Oh, right? I love it. Yeah.
And this is just a really nice technique, just taking a photo and covering it with a layer of wax medium and then a layer of a very pretty, browny gray, and then just kind of like searching back or digging back to the subject matter, picking and choosing what you want to come forward.
Yeah.
Right? So I think this is a really good place to stop. And I think that if you just do a piece like this, that you'll be very, very happy with it. So if you use your tempera or encaustic gesso to put light in the light areas, then you make some beautiful either bluey gray or brown gray or just whatever your darkest color is.
Okay.
Kind of cover the whole thing, artistically, fuse it, and then start to sort of explore scraping the surface with the razor blade. I mean, it's just so beautiful. Like, look at these lovely little like drippy lines. You can kind of, if you have bumps that you don't like, you can kind of get rid of them or take them down, right? And you're just really focusing on sort of bringing back the life, that was in the photo, and following these sort of forms, like, if you did the dress or you did a flower, you did another horse, you could just kind of bring that subject matter back to the forefront. Right?
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
Okay. So send me the photos if you want me to print them this week.
Yeah, I would love that.
Okay. And then what we'll do, our next meeting is we'll work on the same piece. I'm going to keep this for you, this piece, and we'll talk about adding other layers of encaustic onto it.
Okay.
And we'll also talk about then like finishing it with pigment sticks. Great. Okay.
That's awesome.
Okay, great. And also, if you have time, check out the, you can check out, I didn't post Thursday's class yet, but I will probably tomorrow.
Okay.
And it was about layering. It was exactly this demo. It was about layering with like very opaque encaustic, fusing and scraping back.
Okay. I love it.
Okay, awesome.
Telling me that. Yay.
Yay.
I'm so excited to like play with this now.